Hey guys, you can now support this show and make your life 50% better by going to patreon.com/The System Is Down and signing up for the Downers Club, where you're going to get access to a plethora of wild, crazy, and often offensive bonus audio and video episodes of the show on a weekly basis. For more information, just go to patreon.com/The System Is Down. The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Welcome to the System Is Down.
Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a long time, or at least it feels like a long time for me. It's been like 2 weeks since I've recorded anything, sadly, because I was out of town for a week when the Quite Frankly episode came out 2 weeks ago. I was out all week that week helping out at a camp for foster kids, and then I put out on the next Monday, which was last Monday, as you know, I put out the episode that I did with the 29 Toes podcast. So it feels like forever since I've done this. Probably doesn't feel like it to you because I made sure you guys had your content every single week so that your Monday morning commute was just fine and dandy as normal. But to me, it feels like it's been forever, and I missed it. I missed you guys. I missed you. Starting off on a cute note. So the question of the day is, what is masculinity? What is masculinity? Today, it's become kind of a four-letter word. Somehow toxic masculinity, they're both synonymous, and it's a four-letter word, meaning if you have a penis, then you're bad. And, I mean, there's a lot of males in the world who kind of fit that mold, the very hard stereotype that men are thrown into. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But man, I don't even remember how to do this stuff. It's been so freaking long. What's up, Downers? Welcome back to the least comfortable show on the web, The System Is Down, where we talk about all the uncomfortable stuff like masculinity and, you know, like flat earth, and that we'll talk about the Jews one day when I'm ready for this show to get shut down. I'm just kidding. We won't unless we do, which we will. This is the show where we talk about all the things that make you uncomfortable, all the things that you're not supposed to talk about, all the taboo topics, things like conspiracies, politics, and religion. My name is Dan Smots, and if you're new here, go give a big kiss on the lips and a slap on the rear to the person who invited you. From you and from me. I appreciate them for inviting you, and I appreciate you for being here. So, and if you're one of the many, many people who tune in every single Monday morning for your weekly dose of discomfort, welcome back. It's going to be another fun one. Today's episode is my discussion, as I pointed out, about masculinity. I had two guys on that I thought would be great to talk about masculinity because they're not your everyday man's man, and I think that there's an interesting thing going around where, if you're not a very alpha male brute type, then you are considered to be lesser than a male, and a lot of them end up considering themselves women because they don't fit into that box. And if you are the masculine brute type, then you're a toxic man, and you should be thrown out of society or whatever. I feel like there's a big issue with masculinity right now and what even that means. So let me know what you think masculinity means. I don't want to get too much into it here at the beginning because I'm pretty sure we went over it in the episode quite a bit. This was recorded quite a while back and I edited it quite a while back, so I haven't listened to it. Can't say for sure, but I think we went over all this stuff, so don't want to talk too much here at the beginning. But it's an interesting thing that's going on, and I think it's something that we need to be a little bit concerned about for our boys growing up. And Facebook is on. I apologize for the beeps and dings and notifications in the background. But I have a son, and I'm sure a lot of you have sons, and they're coming into this strange time where the idea of masculinity is really blurry. It's either bad or it's bad. It seems like those are the only two options. So we'll get into that here in just a couple minutes. There's seconds, whatever. In probably about 30 seconds, we'll get into that. But before we do, I got to remind you guys to go over to Patreon and sign up for the Downers Club for as little as a cup of coffee, $5 a month. and support the show. Get a bunch of bonus audio and video content every single month. Go to patreon.com/The System Is Down. Also, the show today is sponsored by our wonderful sponsor, the 29 Toes Podcast. You guys got a chance to hear their episode that they did with me on as a guest last week. Go give them a like and a subscribe and a share and all that stuff too, because they're cool guys and they were cool enough to have me on, and they're cool enough to support this show financially, and they are helping me give you guys bigger and better content every single month. They are members of the Downers Club, all three of them. So go check out the 29 Toes Podcast. It's very different than this one. So if you don't like what you hear here, maybe you'll like that. And if you do like it, I like both, but I'm strange. So go find the 29 Toes Podcast wherever podcasts are found. Okay, let's get into this. This is my conversation with Nathan Sipes and CR Pendleton, two very artsy males about masculinity. Let's get weird. Well, today I'm joined by two very masculine men who, after a hard day's work out in the field, like to come home and kick their kids out of the way, grab a cold beer, and sit down in front of the TV and watch sports like NASCAR and ball things. And they just like killing things with their bare hands and devouring them whole. And we're here. That's why I had them on, because we're here to talk about masculinity. I've got Nathan and CR, who both have been on the podcast before. Nathan, how's it going?
Pretty good.
Good. CR?
Yeah. I think that's why we both have beards. It's like just oozing.
Mm-hmm. It's just oozing with masculinity. Just dripping with testosterone.
That's correct.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I wanted to just have some guys on who aren't the stereotype of men. No offense to any of you, because we're all in the same boat here. We've probably all been called fag just as much as any gay person in the world. And just curious to get you guys' thoughts on what masculinity is. So let's. I don't have any icebreaker questions. Don't really have any notes or anything. CR, thoughts?
Well, I'm more curious. You told me that this had developed out of a conversation the two of you guys had that went on for a long period of time. So was there a debate that went on between the two of you? Am I entering into a debate between the two of you?
There's no debate. There's no real debate. It was more just trying to, figure out thoughts on... we pretty much agree on most things in life, except for he leans more left and I lean more right, but that's besides the point. That's not what we're talking about.
Personal information I'd rather not spread on the internet.
Yeah, just so you guys know that you shouldn't be listening to anything that this guy says. But we were just chatting about it and having some drinks and chatting about the current where society is today, and the views that they put out about masculinity and what it means to be a man, and it can go a lot of ways. What's your take on the current state of society and manhood, CR?
Well, okay, so the current state of society, I don't know that I would say that it's much different than it's been throughout history. Of course, I'm going to enter into this with a lot of
God stuff,
jargon. Yeah,
God stuff.
Some people call it nonsense.
No, I said God stuff.
Oh, God stuff. I thought you said nonsense, but a lot of people would say they're one and the same. But no, I'm definitely going to have that sort of biblical perspective to what it is that I'm bringing to the table here. But I would say that. So I would want to start with the fact that we're fallen. Man is fallen, so there's a sin nature that's tainting everything, and it's not like all of a sudden things are just so much worse than they were 1,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago or whatever. It's definitely it's the same game that's being played over and over again. But if we're talking about what's going on in the current cultural climate, the conversation that's happening, where you've got all these people who it's clearly there's a heightened sense of what is gender, how many genders are there, what is maleness, what's masculinity, what's femininity, all of those kinds of things. If that's the conversation we're getting into, then
a little bit of both. This can go anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm more interested in talking about the current state of things because, my personal opinion is that, I've never been alpha male, go kill something type. I spend 90% of my time sitting alone in a dark room working on some art in one way or another. And I like the color. I like light red very much, which some people call pink. And
This is my lava lamp.
I
behind
did
me.
notice that. Yep. So yeah, I think it's important to have the discussion as to, is this stuff, like, why is this stuff like frowned upon as far as manliness and everything? Why is well, there's toxic masculinity where it's bad to be a man at all, and then there's the men's side, men saying that men aren't man enough because they don't fit into a certain box, and then because of that box that they don't fit into, they're, I think that plays a lot into this whole idea of like gender confusion and some men thinking that they're women and that type of thing. I don't know. What do you think?
No, that's an excellent place to start the conversation. I almost feel like we could go, bink, here we're starting now.
All right.
So does this vacancy and a sense of actual defined roles contribute to even more unclarity in who we are as men and women, things like that? So yes, I would say that's it. But confusion, again, I'm going to go back to the fallen man thing. Confusion is Satan's game. That's what he's done from the beginning of time, is to try to get us to be confused about who we are and that we're God's children and that he loves us fully, right? But how that's playing out now is, yeah, you're absolutely seeing people, men really not having people to look up to. I think, you and I have talked a lot about millennials and Gen X. I'm Gen X, clearly. Mm-hmm. But I do feel bad for the generations that are coming along, because I would say from the times, the change that I've seen from being a kid is that there's just less and less of role models for us to look up to, people to look up to. And I really feel bad for the younger kids today, men not being men and leading their households and things like that. And it's causing people to look elsewhere. It's allowing that confusion to get in a lot more. So yeah, I think that part of it is changing. But yeah, you're to clarify for anybody out there that's listening, I don't fit the roles as you stated. I'm not into sports at all. Like I could watch football. I will watch the Super Bowl. Yeah. Mostly because of the entertainment and the commercials. I actually prefer the commercials to the actual game itself. But I mean, yeah, I can get into it.
We do a Super Bowl party almost every year, and we have people over, and we'll mute the game, then we'll take it off mute during the commercials.
Right on. Yeah. So, but I have two boys. I have two sons, ages 10 and 11. He's going to be 12 in a couple of weeks, so he's going to yell at me if I don't say that he's basically 12. But and they're sports fans. They're they play soccer and basketball. Yeah. My one son, my oldest son, is very talented with basketball. I mean, he can do all these things. I'm like, is he really my child? Because he's athletic and coordinated. I'm not. Like, if you tried to throw me a ball, I will try to catch it. It will probably go through me. There's like this invisible hole right here. It will go through me. Yeah. So yeah, I come from this background where I'm way geared towards art. I drew a lot as a kid, and I was very into music. I've been playing music since I was basically in diapers. There's actually pictures of me. I went over to a piano when I was still wearing diapers, and I just started picking out on my own. People in my family were not really into music that much. They're not like overly geared that way. And I picked out a basic triad. I figured out a chord, and it sounded beautiful to my ears, even as a little kid. Mm-hmm. So I gravitated that way. I was a very emotional child. And so you're talking to a guy, I have beard. I'm into like all kinds of music. I'm into metal sometimes, but I'm like, but I will listen to like the lightest stuff out there. And I will do, like, I'm into bluegrass, and I'm into, orchestral music. I played violin when I was in school. I'm very much into the arts. I actually spent yesterday at the local art museum. I just went there and I walked around for an hour. I do that on a regular basis. So
Gay.
yeah. So enough about me. I feel like I'm talking a lot, but that's
you're
my
fine.
perspective. I'm way into the creative side of things, and I'm not into the traditional masculine men things.
Sure.
If you
Yeah. Nathan, how about you?
I would
Actually,
yeah.
before that, did you play any sports in school, or have you
No.
always been opposed?
No, none. I sort of kind of got into the idea of shooting a basketball. My technique was all wrong, but I actually got really good at making baskets.
I like the idea of basketball, but I don't like your basketball.
Yeah, yeah, and there's more to the crazy story. But I was terrible in gym class. I hated gym class. I mean, I'm always been a little bit chubby, but I was never like the fattest kid in my class.
I always took solace in that.
But I was definitely close to the last pick.
Sure.
I could never climb a rope or do a pull up or whatever. So
Yeah, I feel like we're all gonna have pretty similar stories. But Nathan, how about you?
Yeah, my story as far as like creativity and music is very similar to yours. There's not a point in my life I can't remember somehow being attached to music, so I'm definitely all about that. I've always been more interested in the creative stuff in science and different things like that are more indoor activities than perhaps outdoor activities. Although I grew up out in the middle of nowhere with tons of acreage, and I loved being outside too. And as far as sports, like I don't watch sports at all. Could not find it in me to be interested. I've tried to be interested in spectator sports many times, but I just can't find anything in it to be attached to. I do enjoy being active in sports. I'm actually pretty average at athletic things, but I wouldn't necessarily, if you gave me the choice, like, hey, you can spend all day inside working on music and nobody's going to distract you, or you can go outside and play sports with a team, or even go hiking. Like honestly, I'd probably be more towards that, but I would definitely choose music any day. Like I'm not going to want to go be on a team playing sports if I had the ability to be alone inside making something. So
Right.
yeah, I'm just not interested in having a few beers with my buddies and couch surfing while watching other people play sports. I just don't find that to be interesting. That sounds like I'm really talking down upon people who like it, because I'm speaking
Talking down
negatively
upon
about
people
it,
who like
but
it.
I understand that they have different life experiences, and a lot of times their fathers and grandfathers it's something they shared, and so it carries some sort of a sentiment to them, and that's maybe why they like doing it. But that just wasn't the case for me. My dad watched NASCAR and football, but it didn't really mean anything to me.
Yeah, mine did too, actually.
Mhm.
So, but like I was saying, like the fact that there is this box that none of us fall into. Did you guys ever have like pushback from people? Like, I think that my concern is I think that there's a lot more pushback now. I think it's getting worse and worse. Where you have to be this, and if you are that, you're bad. Men are bad, and boys should be girls, and so on and so forth. Did you guys get that kind of pushback back in your like childhood, as far as like you should be in sports, or you should be into the things that your parents or relatives were into?
well, how old are you, Nathan?
I am almost 29, so
Okay.
I'm still under 30.
Right on. See, I'm 43, so we'll have a little different timeline perspective.
Definitely.
But I didn't get pushback from my family, but I certainly got it at school. I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't the kid who obviously with the athletic ability and things like that. However, I got away with a lot because of my musical ability. So that was like the key right there. If I didn't have that, I would have probably paid a lot heavier of a price for not fitting whatever mold that was expected, especially back in the 80s when I was a kid, But
Yeah.
I like to do normal kid stuff. I don't know that it was like gender specific. I have a sister who's 18 months younger than me, and she was always taller than me, and she still is to this day. She's like almost 6 foot.
Wow.
Her kids are like 6'5". And it's ridiculous. But so she was actually more of a tomboy and did more of that type of stuff than what I did. But we all, I did grow up in the 80s, so we rode bikes without helmets and and I grew up in a small town, and we didn't have money. So I did a lot of the kinds of things that you see stereotypically in the TV shows and the movies from the 80s.
Yeah.
It was a good time. I feel like it was a better time to be a kid back then. I live in a really nice neighborhood now, and my wife she grew up at a much higher level than what I did. And now it's like we can't even let our kids go 5 houses down the street, or you're looked at like you're a terrible parent who doesn't want your kids at all. But it's like we live in an unbelievable neighborhood, and it's completely safe here. Where I grew up, there was actually probably real danger, but we just went out and we lived life.
Yeah.
And I feel like kids are definitely being robbed of a real life experience and the potential to actually deal with consequences. That's the thing. You're going to fall down. You're going to hurt yourself on your bike. You need to jump a ramp or do something stupid. I mean, I was not good at those kinds of things, but I certainly got my chance to make mistakes and deal with the results of those failures. And what I see amongst this next generation is they're so protected. They're growing up in a little bubble. And I lament this greatly because of my kids. I try to get them, I try to push the edge as much as possible with my kids, but culturally there is that message that you're a terrible parent if you let your kid, outside of certain cultural expected boundaries and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. Now, Sarah, you brought up, you used the word tomboy, which is another note that I have down here, which I think is interesting. That the fact that for women who, aren't the doll dress, whatever, like there's kind of a classification for it. Like, oh, you lean a little bit more toward wearing shorts and doing the boy activities and stuff like that. But that's cool. That's okay. You're a tomboy. We don't have that for men. You're either this or you're some fruity thing in between, and there's no like kind classification for it. So
yeah, that's true. And it also goes to show my age and my cultural sensitivity. You
right.
Probably wouldn't use the word tomboy today. Like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's outlawed yet or not, but it's probably pretty close.
Right. But I'm sure if I tweeted something and it came off to the wrong person, I'd be getting a barrage of hate.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably.
Yeah.
So Nathan, did you get pushback in school for your fruity personality?
Yeah, I would say I did. I kind of rode the line though. Like I was not bullied to the extent that a lot of people were, and so I'm not gonna play the tiny violin at all. Like I generally either made it so that it wasn't fun for them to pick on me, or I stood up for myself. And I watched a lot of my friends get a lot more bullied than I did, and a lot of times that's how I got my life experience of getting in fights, is because I wouldn't fight for myself, but if I saw my friend getting picked on, I definitely was fired up. So but I definitely did get a lot of, I don't know if I'd say pushback, but a lot of criticism of like who I was as a person.
Yeah.
A lot of people saying I was weird, and probably a great number of people, probably a great number more people than said it to my face, probably thought I was a little too girly or soft. But most people just saw me as weird. And I guess I usually, looking back, I can realize I was pretty good at reading people, and I could understand like how to get along with them. So I usually used my, I don't know whether that would be social skill, which I don't feel like I have a lot of, to kind of slide by. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of people, not even outside of my family, that would say things that I don't know whether they meant it that way, but it definitely like made me feel like I should be questioning whether I liked boys or girls.
Sure.
And I remember in elementary school, and this will date me for sure in your eyes, but they were bringing the first Britney Spears album in a CD jewel case to school, and they were looking at all the pictures, and they're like, "Oh my God, she's so hot!" And I've never been attracted to her, and I was like, is there something wrong with me that I don't agree with them, you know? And so yeah, there was a lot of that stuff, just like not feeling like I fit in with a lot of the other boys, and because I had 3 older sisters and no brothers, I definitely enjoyed hanging out with the girls a lot more, just because I was used to that. So I don't know that there was necessarily a whole lot of like blatant pushback, but I definitely had a lot of kind of like sideways glances and things that I felt. But
yeah, and I probably got a little bit more picked on than you, not pining for sympathy or anything, but it was like through junior high and then up through about half of high school. Then like the second half of high school, I started just not giving a crap, and it's because I got into a better clique of friends who were more self-empowering and that type of thing. Friends that appreciated my strangeness, and got to the point where people would still say the same things, and I would just not. I would disarm them basically, like, "Oh, you're gay? Are you gay?" And I'd be like, "Yes, yep." Now what? What else you got, man? Like, well, what does it matter to you if I was or if I'm not? But yeah, it's interesting. And so there's also like men, as far as the media coverage goes, we've in every single sitcom since the beginning of sitcoms, except for maybe a few, maybe like the Cosby Show or something. They've always portrayed the man, the dad, as like this bumbling retard who doesn't know, who just basically the thing that I described at the beginning of the show. He's just this dumb guy who is there to cause the problems that the wife is there to clean up, and doesn't care about his kids, sits around drinking all day. CR, what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, I think there's a certain awesomeness with comedy to be able to kind of like poke fun at stereotypes or reality or whatever, a false reality. It's so yes, is there a lot of that? In fact, I was just having this conversation with another friend of mine who had recently watched geez, what was it? What was the last Disney movie that had Oprah in it?
A Wrinkle in Time?
Yeah, A Wrinkle in Time. And talked about how it really made the dad out to be the bad guy and the buffoon and all that kind of stuff. And it was just another one of those. It's drawing a new stereotype or perpetuating the stereotype that men are ridiculous and they can't manage their lives, and they're basically just always making mistakes, and if it was not for the mother or the women in their lives, they would be a mess. There's some truth to that. I would say even biblically, that's the whole point why Adam needed a helpmate. Like, there is truth to that. But on the flip side of that, constantly pushing that message forward is making people kind of believe that they're making boys feel like they are not as capable, and young men feel like that they're, that's just their destiny, and it's okay for them to not step up and do the right thing all the time and stuff. So I think there's definitely some damage being done because that stereotype is being perpetuated, and I don't know, maybe actually very much marketed out to the masses now.
Yeah, it's like you complain about men being this way, but you're perpetuating the continuation of that by setting the standard as that, and now you have men in their mid to late 20s and 30s who sit in their parents' basements playing video games all day. What do you think they're going to do when they go out and get married? It's funny because it was a couple weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, Kayla was out of town visiting family out in Colorado, and I was left here alone with the kids, and I was like, I'm going to do something fun. I'll take them out, see a movie. Saw the new Incredibles movie, and then the entire movie has Mr. Incredible is taking care of the kids while the mom is gone because she's the more, the better superhero or whatever, and he is falling apart and crumbling to bits and can't handle anything. And I'm like, dude, I'm here with my kids. I took them out with to see this movie, and you're going to sit here and show them that the dad is completely worthless without the mom? Mm-hmm. I do agree with what you're saying, that there is value in both 100%, but it's just frustrating to be like, I'm doing it right now, and then I do the right thing and take them to see a movie, and it's they're telling my kids that I'm not doing the right thing.
Right. Absolutely.
Nathan, got anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think most comedy is successful if it's couched in some degree of truth.
Sure.
And so I think I think what CR is saying is like there's definitely some truth there. Like that's why we can look at it and say it's funny rather than absurd. And so I think what I mean, it is bad that we're portraying this image, and I definitely think it's discrediting to fathers and fatherhood as a whole. And if we're going to a religious or a spiritual sense, like you're kind of discrediting God if he calls himself father, and you're making all fathers out to be shitty parents.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we do have a problem with fathers being absent, not interested, not engaged. By and large, there are definitely exceptions, and I think those fathers are not focused on as much because, for whatever reason. But I do think that is touching on the issue, which is men are not brought up to believe that it's okay for them to be involved in the house. Like that's the ladies' arena, and that's where you drink beer and sit on the couch until you pass out. But
Unless you have a man cave.
yeah, unless you have a man cave, which you should,
Unless
because
unless you have your little place in your
Yeah.
house that is allowed to be you. The rest is for the woman.
yep, you should have a man cave because that's definitely a good sign of masculinity. But yeah, like as boys, like if you were, so we can get into this, but if you were to have your child on the playground carrying around a doll, and he was, you
The
know,
next topic that I had. So
yeah,
go
if
ahead.
he was like wearing an apron and playing with the easy bake oven, like there would definitely, I'm sure, even no matter how progressive of a father you are, I'm sure you would feel some question enter into your mind, like, should I be letting this happen? And I guess my question is, if we don't want little boys to feel like they can be involved in like playing house or taking care of baby dolls,
Why would we expect them to be good fathers?
exactly. Why are they going to be active when they grow up? Like, in fact, it's probably going to be even worse, because then you introduce hormones like testosterone into their system, and then you introduce the stress of carrying a job and supporting a family, and then they're going to default to what makes them feel good, which
Right.
is playing outside, you know, with guns and different things. Like, you know, I guess if we could take that even further, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, as boys, you let them just run around outside just terrorizing, and the girls are inside playing in a structured environment. So when they get older, you're just kind of wondering why only the women do anything around the house and the men are just doing what pleasures them.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're all fathers here. Nathan, you only have a girl so far, but CR, what is your take on this? Because like my son he's into sports and stuff like that a little bit. He's only 7, so he's just getting started in baseball and that type of thing. But I mean, early on in his life, he wanted to play with dolls and stuff, which, I mean, he only had his sister to play with, and it was really hard to find, but we found him a boy doll that was wearing blue. Not that I think that matters, obviously, but it was also almost impossible to find a doll that it says things like daddy or daddy or like male statements or whatever. But we did find him one, and he enjoys like getting his nails done and stuff like that, and he's gotten some pushback for things like that. Like, what's your take on that type of thing? Is that a concern, or do you let them be themselves?
Well, I haven't had too much of an issue with that with my kids, because they just seem to gravitate towards more gender specific areas.
Sure.
My daughter's probably a little bit more in the middle on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
She's also, I think it represents more the fact she's a firstborn, so she takes initiative on a lot of stuff, and she's very artistic, but she does extremely well in school. I have to brag on her a little bit. She's actually going into 8th grade this fall, and she's starting college. She's doing 2 college courses this fall.
Nice.
Just got into a special program. So she's very, very driven in that way. My boys, they do gravitate towards video games and sports and more athletic type of stuff. But I mean, I can only say from my perspective, I don't know the beer guzzling sports fanatic guys. Like, I don't know any of them. Even the guys I know that like sports and like beer, they're nothing like the stereotype that is often perpetuated.
Yeah.
And so I find it really weird that there's like this whole cultural thing. I know that there are guys out. I mean,
Yeah, I was gonna say, have you ever
I know
worked
there
in
are
a
guys
factory?
out there that are very chauvinistic, and they have like, their expectations that the women do X and the guys do Y. But
Right.
I don't have that. I don't know if it's because of the household that I grew up in. My parents are not, they didn't have an intentionality to subject me to whatever. I grew up in a household where my dad actually has clinical depression, and he couldn't hold down a job a lot of the times, and he's blind in one eye. And so, and my mom had to work a lot to keep things going. And I, for a period of time in my childhood, we lived in lesser areas, and we were on government assistance and things like that. And so, so my dad cooked my dad cooked probably, and it was a better cook than my mom.
Yeah.
But my mom she tried to cook. It's not really her thing. Now, even today in our household, like, I'm the cook. I actually prefer to cook, and I'm very particular about food. And it's not that my wife can't cook. She's actually a pretty darn good cook, but it just works out that I like to cook a lot more. There are things that she does, like, she just takes it on herself to do more of the laundry, but I do all my own laundry even to this day. So it's like, and I will occasionally do the kids' laundry as well, but she has a particular way that she goes about it. But I actually think that a lot of it is how we were raised, and we're both firstborns, so we take initiative on a lot of things as well. So culturally, I don't currently live in a space where we're extremely divided on gender things, and I don't know a lot of other people that are. There are a few people in my life that I can think of where the guy is the breadwinner, or he only works, and the mom stays home with the kids. But I probably could, and I know a lot of people. These days, there are so few. I might be able to count on one hand the amount of people that I know like that.
Sure.
It's really rare. I mean, most households, they have two people working, and it's a lot of split stuff. So,
Yeah. So the question was, hypothetically, if your kid was like, a little on the weird side, and let's say your kid your son wants to wear a skirt to school, what do you do with that?
okay, that's a lot more specific. It's
Sure.
basically saying, like, I don't really buy into like a lot of gender, what might have been considered gender norms in the 50s or whatever. But so if you get into something as distinct as wearing a dress to school, that's something where I'm probably going to have a conversation, and I'm going to say that there's a certain way, this way to dress, and there's this way to dress, and this is our culture and the way in which we live. And I would explain that other cultures can be different, and that's okay, but this is our culture, and it is important because it does represent something in the current climate. It's the same way that you would dress a certain way to go to work in order to be accepted in the environment that you're in. If you go to a doctor and they're not dressed appropriately, like if you're gonna go to your doctor and they're in a Hawaiian shirt and a pair of shorts, you're probably not gonna feel real confident that you've gone to the right doctor, right? Sure. So there's certain ways that you dress in order to tell others in society that you understand what is going on here.
So do you tell them that they can't? Do you not allow it? Or do you advise them and say, hey, this is going to be bad if you do this and you're going to get picked on? I would strongly advise you to, dress quote unquote normal.
Well, if you can't tell already, I'm very much an external processor, so I say a lot of words. I would definitely start with a conversation. So I wouldn't say, no, you're not wearing that. Go change those clothes. I'd be like, okay, this one's a conversation. And if it meant I'm going into work late and you're going to school late, we're going to go have a conversation. And it's so I would definitely start there. But ultimately, no, I'm not, because I'm protecting them as a parent. There are certain things that I don't want them to have to experience, which is going into a school environment and portraying that particular issue and getting, dealing with the consequences of that particular issue. I think there's a better way to go about it. I don't want to overprotect them, but at the same time, I want to set them up for success.
Sure.
So,
So are you 100? Is it 100% a protecting your kid thing, or is there any bit of it's a little too much deep down? Like, let's say if it was you lived in an area, which I know that you don't, where it was normally acceptable to dress how you want and nobody picked on anybody, would you be like, sure, wear the dress, kid, go for it?
I think okay. So we're talking me here. I am a little outside of the box. So I would say if it were more not just the area that I live in, but the country or the environment that I live in, where it was more of a cultural norm that whether you wore a dress or not was not an issue, I wouldn't have any problem with them wearing a dress. Because I don't think the dress itself defines the gender, but I do have a problem with the message that is sent and received as a result. It's as with anything. Like if my kid, I have tattoos, right? When my kid gets to the point where they're old enough to get tattoos, I want to have a conversation with them because I don't think that it's a great idea to just go out and get a bunch of tattoos. Yeah. I think that you have to understand that there is a message that you're sending. There's a choice that you're making by going down this path. And as long as you understand as much as possible the full potential consequences of your decision and you choose to make that decision, then I can get there in support of that decision. You know, if it's tattoos, there might be decisions I couldn't get in support of, Yeah. But I would have to look at it from that perspective. So it's more the cultural, entering into the culture, and I guess it leans more actually to more protecting them within the cultural environment. But that sounds like a cop out. I understand that sounds like a cop out. It's like, well, you're just trying to hide behind that because you really just have an issue with the way that it would appear, gender and all that kind of. And it's like, yes, I do. I will own that. I do have an issue with the way that it would appear, but but the difference is in walking out the door with it. So that's where the two worlds are going to collide, and my kids are not ready for that collision yet.
Yeah, I would agree. Thoughts, Nathan?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it's all a cultural construct. There are regions in Africa you can go where if you have a red thread or a blue thread around your waist, like if you're a man or a woman and you do the wrong one, like it's super hilarious. And so I think we have to recognize like how much of it really is our cultural memory of what's appropriate to wear. And in that sense, like it's all relative. Yeah, in this culture, we have this set of rules or guidelines. And I agree, like, I consider what I put on and what I leave the house wearing because of the message it sends to other people. When I'm in my own house, I feel pretty comfortable to wear just about anything. You know, it's not really crossing my mind what am I wearing when I'm within my house. And it's only the moment where I think I'm walking out the door that I really consider, is this appropriate? Yeah. So it's not really an issue of like wearing a dress or wearing pants as much as it is, what are the other people that are viewing me going to be considering at that point? And if I really genuinely don't care, or I don't mind what they think, then there's really no reason to filter that. But I think most people do want to control the messages that they send to other people, and that's why they choose to wear certain things or say certain things or anything else. And so, for kids who don't have necessarily the greatest judgment, abilities, I think it's useful as parents to help guide them towards the messages they're sending to other people. But dress up is totally an activity kids love doing, and like if you let a kid dress themselves, it's not going to look good. It's not going to match. Right. They're probably going to be wearing winter boots with a swimsuit or something. Like it's just not really going to add up. And so it's fine to let them play and dress up, but when we want them to present themselves as a certain individual, I think it's helpful to guide them and give them the tools necessary to learn, oh, these colors work together and it makes you look like you're not insane. And so I think things like that are important to help kids understand, but it's not an issue of like well, I'll disown you if you wear a dress in public, you know. I think CR is correct. It's a message that's being sent, and kids don't have the collective knowledge that you gain as you grow up that's required to understand that in context.
Yeah. Now we're talking about like social constructs and everything, and like ideas that society has deemed this is masculine, this is feminine, and I mean, there's people pushing back, like myself. This is the extent of my pushback. I have a pink cup here. There are definitely things in society where we've said that is that and that is that, and some people are pushing back against that. Some people are pushing back to the extent that they're like, there's not only not gender norms, there's not genders. Like, you are somewhere on this giant spectrum, and you can be whatever you want to be. Do you think do you think that our boxing over the years and saying that you're either one or you're the other has caused there to be such a gray middle ground on more important things than blue versus pink, and red versus light blue? Do you think that this has led us to this point that where if you're not a man, you're somewhere in the middle because you like pink? That makes sense?
Okay, well, yeah. This is where this entire debate gets a little, or I know we're not debating, but this entire discussion gets a little funky for me, because I feel like we're talking about very peripheral things. In fact, I would equate the child wears a dress thing, or your son wanting to wear a dress, to whether your son
I didn't
wants
say
to wear
my
clothes.
son wants to wear a dress. I was talking about your son.
Okay, whether my son would want to wear a dress or not, to whether my son would want to wear clothes at all or not. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's
Sure.
really the space where that discussion is in for me. But when you start talking about the definition of genders, how many there are, and you start talking about what societal norms are and all of this stuff, I can get into those conversations, and I'm happy to do it. I find myself just wanting to go back to my original premise, which is it's all about the sin nature and all about how essentially it's all about the heart. So it sounds like it's very dismissive of all the peripheral arguments, but ultimately that's what it comes down to. Because I will tell you, I'm currently a pastor. I'm on staff at a church. I'm not the head pastor. I'm a staff pastor. And there is this whole movement with defining sexuality biblically and making that a public statement, right? And a lot of churches won't go there. And in fact, the church that I'm on staff at should get into a defining element there, but there's certainly a belief system. The issue that ends up happening, though, is that it can become exclusionary. And the bottom line is it's all about the condition of the heart. So you can have a person, let's say, if we're talking about struggling with identity, gender identity of any kind, it does not mean that they can't be moved to find a correct space, as I would deem it, because I have a biblical construct on what gender should be. I believe that the door should be open for them to come in and experience the questions, and hopefully they'll start posturing towards God and make even the most baby steps towards God in that regard. Doesn't mean that they're not going to be attracted to whatever, that they're all of a sudden going to, if they're a man and they're struggling with homosexuality, that they're going to start being attracted to women. I don't think that that's even necessarily the case, but that they will start falling in love with God to the point where they understand that the original lie has entered in so much that they believe that God doesn't love them just the way that they are. So if they can start making baby steps towards recognizing God's love for them, and just little bit by little bit begin to trust God more, that they will eventually get to the point where they will understand that God only wants the best for them, and that if they choose God's ways, that they're actually accepting his love, and then they start finding healing and fulfillment. Doesn't mean that they're going to all of a sudden lose their attraction. That's going to be potentially be with them forever, but that the point is that they start to let go of their own selfish desires and start embracing what God has for them, which is a better life. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about gender issues, gender identity issues. It's the same thing with straight people who want to fulfill their lustful habits or any other kinds of things that you would have that your sin nature desires.
Yeah.
It's falling in love with God and recognizing that he absolutely loves us and trusting him enough that we start moving, posturing towards him and embracing that his way is the best way. So I just totally nuked the conversation. That's where
well, hallelujah, CR.
That's where I'm coming from, man. It's like I can't escape that for any argument. And then when we start discussing the peripherals, I'm happy to discuss it all day long, including politics. Politics are peripherals, right? It's just like it's man's construct to navigate through society, but it's going to be imperfect and messed up. And yeah, I think there are better ways, but ultimately anything that man comes up with is going to pale in comparison with what God has for us. So,
Nathan, rebuttal.
I don't feel the need to rebut anything he said, but I guess the original prompt was
I don't even remember
something about the gender identity. I'm so CR. You talked about how you were a pretty emotional kid and stuff, and you're probably still a fairly emotional individual as an adult.
Yeah, through years of therapy, I've gotten in touch with the fact that I'm actually very, very emotive, but I shut it off really hard for many years. Sure. Most people thought that I was like a heartless robot because I was able to shut it off so much because of my wounding as a child, being pushed back on so much for living out of my emotion. So, but yes.
Yeah, well, heartless robot would be an improvement for us. Right. So, it's not that I don't have emotions. I would consider myself to be someone who does feel emotion fairly strongly, but I'm a lot more analytical than almost anybody I know, with the exception of maybe Dan. So when it comes to the issue of gender, like how you feel means absolutely nothing to whether you're a boy or a girl. Like, do you have an XX or an XY? Like, that's what gender is in my mind. It's a very scientific, very analytical description of things. And there are outliers to that, but we already have categories that those fit into. Mm-hmm. So why there's all of a sudden this question of how do I feel? Maybe I was supposed to be this way or that way. Like, all of those things are just perspectives on who you already are. And so for me, it really doesn't change anything. Like, it's just the way that you look at yourself or you want other people to treat you. And I'm fine with calling you a woman if you want me to do that.
I do.
And I have done that for quite a few people. It's just
you're going to say for quite a few years I've been calling you a woman.
For quite a few years I've been calling you a woman behind your back. No, I've done it for quite a few people, just like because if that's what makes them feel more fulfilled or who they are, that's fine. But really, like, the question of gender is one of chromosomes, and so I don't see that there's any room for question as far as that's concerned. Like, and changing someone's birth certificate, I don't know that that's necessarily the best way to go either, because like that's a pretty medical legal thing, and if I were treating a patient and there was a difference in dosage between female or male, like I would want to know for sure how much I was giving them. And so I don't know. I'm fine with respecting someone's preferences, but I think when we get into the area of like science or, medication,
science of feelings,
like that's just not really something that we need to be talking about as far as I'm concerned.
All right. Well, you heartless bigot.
That's pretty much
fantastic.
True. Yeah.
Hey, Dan Smots here. I'm taking a second to interrupt myself talking to talk about myself because, I don't get paid a penny for the hours and hours that I put into creating this show for you guys in your greedy little ears, and I've got a family to feed. To make that happen, I run my own media business called Goulash Media. If you have a need in anything from video production to graphic design to audio production and beyond, you can get it all for a painfully fair price at Goulash Media. In video, I do weddings, music videos, commercials, pageants, plays, etc., etc., etc. For design, I do photo editing, album art, logos, branding, business cards, merchandise, you name it. For audio, I do engineering, production, production, editing, jingles, and, well, podcasts. So if you've got a media need of any kind, or if you'd just like to give a little something back and help keep my children fed, check out all the endless options at my website, goulashmedia.net. That's goulash, Goulash, media.net, where we cater to the little guy with the big vision. Okay. Now, we're living in a culture where, and this might just be the circles that I run in, I see a lot of this getting more and more prevalent, but the whole feminist movement, not the equality movement, but the third wave, men are bad movement of man-spreading, mansplaining, men are gross, toxic masculinity, blah, blah, blah. I feel like that is going to have some serious issue, like that's going to have some serious impact on our sons growing up, and boys growing up today, and especially the boys of feminists who are out there saying that the way that you are is pretty much tainted from birth, and you were born wrong. I think that that's going to cause a shift in, the mentality and the mental stability of men in the future. What do you guys think?
If I was born in this environment, I probably would be one of those people who was like, please call me by her, she pronouns. Right. Because I remember having thoughts, and just to give a little bit more breadth of my scope, I guess, like I had very, very few male influences in my life. Like I was primarily raised by and surrounded by women. So there were a lot of differences between myself and those people. And I recognized those, and I felt confused by it, and I wondered, why that was. And I remember thinking like maybe I should be a woman, So like there were a lot of those questions in my mind as a child just by the environment I was in. And that wasn't one in which it was acceptable to be a transvestite or to be, culturally non-binary or anything. So if it were acceptable, I wonder where that path would have led me. So I can't imagine having those questions in a more liberal environment. And like I eventually worked my way through that and recognized like those things as not really pertaining to my situation, like understanding that I do fit in somewhere, but it wasn't in this strictly binary thing, like I am who I am, and regardless of all those other things, it doesn't change that. So I definitely kind of feel like a lot of the people who identify differently are people who are like us and are not told the message of it's okay to be who you are. Yeah. Rather, you need to be this because now there's a category for that. I don't know.
CR?
I think I lost track of the original question. But, you were talking about the fall.
Toxic femininity. Or toxic feminism.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the easiest way to cut to the chase on that one. There was recently a blow up because these two transgender boys who are living as girls won these races. There was, some track races or whatever, some high school or something like that. Yeah. And the fallout from that was pretty significant because you had and it's weird because in the feminist movement, they were really eating themselves. The liberal side of the movement was really eating their own, because you have the group that of feminists that are pro transgender, and then plenty of feminists who are not pro transgender, in that they don't support the idea of men dressing as women and competing against women. It takes away from women. So
yeah, I think it's funny because they're like, women can do everything that men can do, but when the men become the women and then they start beating all the women in their categories, how do you handle that?
Right. So it's really sad how it's all playing out right now, because it is a lot of just vicious, venomous attacks. And I really sadly see it more on the left, because I feel bad for some of my friends on the left, because I don't know how they're getting sleep at night, They're going
Yeah.
off on each other, and they're going off on Trump. And I didn't vote for Trump, and I didn't vote for Hillary, so and I did vote. But
Gary, huh? Gary Johnson, huh?
uh, there's just this really vicious war going on right now, where they're just taking each other out. I'm not saying that the Me Too thing isn't bad, but it's amazing how there's just all this fallout within the entertainment industry of these people who were liberal leaders are getting taken down by a liberal movement, So anyway, overall, the fallout, if you will, from all of this hypersensitivity towards gender, I think is going to be really, it's going to be detrimental for decades to come. I don't know if for America anyway. I mean, what's funny is I get to Europe usually about once a year. I love going over to Europe. I don't see, and they tend to lean what we would call more left over there, but I don't see this kind of negativity over there as much as I do here in America. Like, it's ridiculous, the amount of just absolute anger that's coming out right now. And I see it mostly coming from the left. And there's a lot of it in this, in the feminist movement right now. And I do think it's going to impact a lot of things. Yes. Will it impact it for those of us who have sons or worried about how it's going to be for our sons in the future? Yeah, there's definitely reason to be concerned, but the cultural climate is just vicious right now.
What do you think is the cause of it? I mean, we did get Trump in, who everybody said that he was this disgusting, gross pig of a guy, and so we gotta. I mean, do you think that really weighs into it as much as everybody makes it out to be, or do you think that there's something else there that is causing this new outrage about every single thing?
Well, I think the Trump thing was a trigger just because of the climate. But when I look at Trump, I don't see very much difference between Trump and Bill Clinton. It's like, I can't defend. There's no way I would defend Trump. But the reaction, I think, is there's just. I think it was such a shock. I still think the election was such a shock for a segment of the country that believed that things were, because of Obama, they thought that our entire culture held a more leftist or left of center view. And what they haven't done an autopsy on the Obama administration. Obama was a likable dude. I mean, the reality is like, I didn't vote for him, but I'll tell you, like, he's a cool cat, man. He can sing. He's quick. He
can drop bombs in a very charismatic way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's got all the right thing. And the left fell in love with him so much they could, and even the right was willing to engage him because, he's an okay guy. He was acceptable on that level. They bought into the whole thing. I think the left thought that the entire country bought into his policies. Yeah. And no, we're just an entertainment culture. If you're an entertaining person, you're going to get the votes. And that's what happened with Trump. He's the more entertaining character, and he resonated more with our very messed up society, basically.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, he was a reality television star. Of course, he understands how that works. And like the whole fact that he is announced for about a week now. He's going to announce his pick for the U.S. Supreme Court Justice, and tune in tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah.
He's playing that up as a showpiece. Like, he understands how to engage the public in this frivolous culture of entertain me. Mm-hmm. And I do agree. He was a much more entertaining, albeit insane, candidate. Although maybe he wasn't more insane than the other one. But she was not anywhere near as entertaining. She looked like a North Korean dictator who smiled at balloons. And I don't know that people really felt the connection with either candidate, but they definitely were like, well, I could wake up tomorrow and we could be in either one of these two disparate fantasy worlds. And that was entertaining. And so I think people bought into that. Plus, it gave voice to a lot of the negative sentiment that people had been, for almost a decade prior to, felt like they couldn't express, which is, I hate people who are not white, and I want my jobs back because 2008 sucked, and it's probably because of the brown people. You know, like, it gave this voice to those people who had been silenced for 10 years and had to look at a black president, and then they get to say, finally, you know.
We have somebody to blame again?
Yeah, sure. So I think it amplified by the fact that there's a silent group of people who are very racist and upset, and combined with the fact that there are so many people that
on both sides.
Yeah, that like the entertainment. Yeah, I mean, it shocked a lot of people, especially the left, who thought for sure we were going to have the first female president next.
Yeah, and go ahead, sir.
Well, I mean, I feel like this will get into a conversation on politics, but
that's what I was going to say.
I would agree with that. Essentially, I think that the race aspect has been magnified a lot. I actually believe that it's a lot of it's more leans to a lot of the Trump voters actually believe in something different as far as economics and things like that. And what they don't understand is that Trump is a corporatist. He's not. So I owned a small business for a number of years. I still have a bit of a business. And I know a lot of other small business owners. And I can tell you, one of my businesses was hit very hard by Obama's policies. And a lot of the people, not him, but a lot of the people that he helped to get in place in more local and state government areas. And their agenda that moved forward was very detrimental to business, to American businesses and small businesses. So a lot of people that felt the results of that, I think, voted for Trump, believing that he was somehow going to bring forward better economic policies for American businesses and industries. And that's a lie. The guy is a total corporatist. He's just going to make it great for big companies to operate. He's not going to make it great for the smaller companies to operate. He's going to make it far worse, in fact. So
definitely.
I do think that there I'm sure there's an element of the race thing that's in there. I think that a lot of it is false hope, false belief in a different system too.
Yeah, because most people were talking about how he's a billionaire and he's got to be able to fix their system, you know.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
We're definitely not here to talk about Trump.
Well, is he? I mean, he does tie into the feminism.
Oh, it does, and I find it funny that, you know, they're like, well, the woman didn't win, so we're now a male chauvinist country all of a sudden, and we have to take up arms against male chauvinists. I also find it funny, and this is kind of on topic, the whole pussy hat movement with the feminists and everything. Immediately after, you know, you're wearing these pussy hats, but then you're confused on like what. I feel like people on that side are confused on what their stance really is. It's like, we've got these pussy hats, but you can have a penis and still be a woman, right? So where's the line? Like,
yeah, and talking about like what is appropriate to present in public, right. Like that's definitely.
Imagine if Trump supporters went out with dick hats on and were like, no, screw you guys.
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't be nearly as well received, I don't think.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah. I don't know. I just feel like there's no middle ground for men these days. I feel like you're either bad or you're a woman. If you're understanding of emotions, or if you're not, I feel like a lot of women do want the alpha male, but they also don't like admitting that they want the alpha male, and so they bash on the alpha male and the beta male, and I think it's just a big clusterfuck. But another point that I had down here, and it might be nothing, but I want to get you guys' thoughts on it. As far as like our language, for feminine things in women, we have words like beautiful, which beautiful can define things that are like just in nature that aren't necessarily effeminate, or it can define a car or anything like that, but it cannot define a man. It can pretty much define anything and say that it is a wonderful and nice to look at thing, except for a man. Thoughts?
Even a male animal, you know, can be described as
right.
beautiful.
Can
Right.
I find you beautiful, Dan?
Yes, I know that you do deep down.
So why can't a dude be described as beautiful?
Are you asking me?
I don't know. It
I'm
sounded
asking
like
you.
that was the premise.
That's the question.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you said that dude's pretty beautiful, like that's then you're gay. If there's anything else in the world that you could say is beautiful, but this thing that is like the epitome of, nice looking, it can't be used to describe a man. I'm just curious if that has any implications for like our language or our culture or anything. I don't know.
I think you can even extend that to the point that a truly masculine man wouldn't even use the term beautiful to describe something that they thought was beautiful. So if this, raised truck driving mud and rifle rack, driving beer drinking guy went out and drove up to a cliff, got out and looked at the sunset and said, "Damn it, that's beautiful." Like he would feel a little twinge of questioning his, masculinity inside. So even, masculine men are not supposed to be able to describe something beautiful. You can't even describe the most gorgeous woman as beautiful. You got to say, "Yeah, she's hot," or describe all the terrible things you would do to her. Like you can't use the word beautiful if you're a masculine man. Like only soft men use the word beautiful. And you definitely don't describe a dude as beautiful. That's just gay.
It's a beautiful point, Nathan.
Thank you.
CR, what do you think?
I don't know. I guess I'm like, I really don't I don't even know anybody who is who oozes so much testosterone.
Where do you live,
any of
CR?
the pictures that you guys have painted. I love I love almost the movie treatment that you've given to these characters. It's
Would you say that movie treatment is beautiful?
yes, it is beautiful. I don't know, because I know dudes who drive 4-wheel drive trucks and have that are way into guns. I don't know anybody who currently uses a gun rack. Takes me back to.
I think you're missing the point here.
Yeah. No, it's like I guess I don't. I am in such a fluid space. I know that sounds crazy, but maybe it's because I've worked in the entertainment industry for years or other things like that. But like, I don't know the stereotypes, and I come from a small town in rural Ohio with some people like that, but that sort of fit that. But like, I don't know that there's. I would almost, if a guy was that absolutely non-feminine, if you want to put it in that kind of context, I would actually think that maybe he was struggling with proving something. He protests a little too much.
Right.
Yes.
Like, I really don't know anybody who is oozing so much testosterone that they won't use the word beautiful to describe something or something.
Sure. How about the word in general? Like my point before Nathan's point of what?
Oh, come on. That was a beautiful point.
Thank you. Yeah, just okay. Is there, if you saw a very nice looking gentleman, would you think it was weird if even a woman said that guy, he's beautiful? Would that come across as strange?
I wouldn't find it that way, but I'm sure that there's probably people who would. I've literally had conversations with people where, like, you in the entertainment world or whatever, I don't know. It's like we used to talk about Brad Pitt as a third sex. Like, he's just outside of the realm of, like, there's dudes and chicks, and then there's these people that are girls and guys that are so beautiful, if you will, that they're amazing. Like,
attractive to equally attractive to both genders.
Right. Yeah. And it wasn't so much sexual attraction. It's just like, who can deny that this person is like glorious and they're.
I'm Brad Pitt curious.
Yeah, it's a beautiful man.
There was a point that I was going to before that, and I lost it. But anyway,
well, if you find it, let me know. Yeah. So, well, I guess you can't let me know, but if you think of it during your final thoughts on what masculinity is, unless you guys, have any other topics.
I got my thought. Can I come back?
All right. Take it away.
I would say far less than the descriptor words or whatever you want to talk about. I think that actually the physicalness between men is probably the bigger issue. So a few years ago, I did a missions trip to Cambodia. And what amazed me is when I was over there, like dudes hold hands. They're very physical with each other. They touch each other constantly. Guys are constantly touching each other. You would swear every dude over there that, I mean, literally on the street corner, they're hugging onto each other. They're holding each other's hands. They walk holding hands. It's a very physical culture.
Making out in the alleyways.
And I've noticed that in a couple of other countries that are I don't know if it's just that area of the world or whatever, but in America, we are very separated. This is the thing that I think causes the most lacking amongst guys. The only place that they get physical is if it's in sports, and then there's these absurd ways that they actually get physical with each other.
You can't slap a guy on the butt unless you're playing a manly game. Then you know it's manly.
Yeah. Right.
It's manly gay.
So I would actually say that I think that there's a bigger issue in that we somehow in our Western culture we have gotten so removed from touch and being connected with each other. There's like this wall up to being emotional, sensitive, touching, that it's causing a void, and that is creating this gender identity issue because people are trying to fill that void in with stuff. Where I think if we were actually a lot more in physical touch with each other, and we actually didn't have these divides over words and stuff like that, that you would see a lot less gender identity issues. So I think that even you could almost call it the conservative or overly Christian culture movement that maybe has infiltrated the West that's caused so much of a divisive nature between men and women. It's like actually that void that's been created. I wouldn't blame it all on the church or conservative culture, but I would say it has participated in that. And that void that has been created, what's entered in is gender identity issues.
Interesting. Nathan?
Yeah, definitely. Like Americans are probably the most standoffish culture in the world. And I mean, we also have the most distance between houses, the most like acreage per family. It's crazy, but we like our space. And like a lot of other cultures are very touchy-feely, and like that's not the first time I've heard of cultures where men are walking down the street holding hands to show their friends, but any physical touch you get from another human releases certain chemicals into your body that make you feel good, like that physical touch. Even when oftentimes elderly people, the only touch they get is from like medical people, like taking care of them. And like if you were to go visit someone in an assisted living home or something and just like hold their hand, like you can see how much that means to them. And there's something greater to the act than just skin touching skin. Like there's endorphins released into your system that give you a happy feeling, that you don't get in other ways. And for sure, men who maybe like I want to touch my friend, but I don't know, I'm not like that. Yeah. Like they're definitely not getting that feeling, like that happy feeling that you get when you touch another person. You're not sharing in that moment, and that is definitely leading, I think, to a lot of other things. But it's definitely causing a lack of real bond between men, but also between men and their children, because a lot of those men that feel that way, they don't want to hug their kids either, because that's not okay, and they don't express any type of affection physically to their kids. It's like, oh, I love you, but you never express it physically.
You say when you're on your deathbed, you knew I loved you that whole time, right?
Exactly. And like if the way, like we know when babies are born, like they put them on their mother because that skin on skin contact, it does special things. And like we know that on a medical level even, and it's necessary to cause that bond. And like the ritual in most cultures is that the extended family will meet with the baby and they'll hold the baby. Like that's just something that we do. It causes that bond, and you're closest to the people you touch the most, like they're your family. You interact with them all the time. And if fathers are not hugging their kids, they're not gaining those bonds, those close relationships most of the time. a lot of kids feel closer to their moms because they have that. Like, it's not even I like my mom more. It's the psychosomatic reaction of mom touches me more than dad. And so we're kind of in this area where in our culture, we're struggling the most with these kinds of things of like dad being engaged and involved and feeling close with dad. And we're also in a culture where men don't touch other people all that often. And so I think definitely you're correct that that's a void that's being filled not just with the gender issues in my mind, but a lot of other things such as, you know, pigging out on beer. And maybe you don't know guys like that, but you're pretty far east of the Mississippi. And in my world,
And he works at a church.
yeah, I have seen
We
the
like our
closer.
beer. It's just like, you know, expensive microbrews and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
Of course.
totally.
You
Like
can't even find those around here.
yeah, the further east you go from Mississippi, the more liberal you are. And like even people from here, if you're from Ohio, that's still an eastern state. Like, you know, that's not Midwest. And so like I would say this might be an overestimation, but I would say 3 out of every 5 men I see drive big trucks, wear Wranglers, have a gun rack, drink only Bud Light or Miller Lite. Like they are the stereotypical redneck.
Yeah, you go. We had only one bar here in town for a while, and I went in there. This is totally on a side tangent, but I went in there and I was like, "Do you guys have any IPAs?" And she's like, "What's that?" And she was like, "Is that like I've got an uncommon stout, which is like a coffee beer?" And I'm like, "That is pretty much the closest thing you've got,
Yeah.
and it's really far off.
It's pretty much
Everything
the
else was just
opposite.
Bud Light or Keystone or Coors or whatever."
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
So yeah, we definitely do maybe have a different experience with that, but we do see a lot of the hyper masculine men around us that they would have a large problem getting over touching their guy friend.
yeah, scarred for life. 'Cause
Yeah.
I was. My friend hugged me the other day when we saw each other for the first time in 10 years. Now I'm not sure if I'm straight or not anymore.
I think that is why perhaps like there was a lot of bullying and stuff because like they're threatened by the idea and that forces them to think about certain things that they're not prepared to handle. And some of that is passed down from poor fathers that didn't express, physical love.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say the most important reason why I wanted to have this conversation is because there are going to be boys and men coming up here very shortly who are mentally scarred from a lot of these things, I think, and they're not going to know that there are people out there that, are like us. We're not the norm, but we're also men, and we're totally fine with sticking to the label of men, even though it has gotten a bad rep lately for whatever reason. So I want to get you guys' thoughts and like your words for future men, what they should, how they should take these shifts in our culture, and how they should take these, I'd say attacks on their biology.
It's a pretty tall order.
Mm-hmm. Take it away. Whoever wants to go.
Nathan, I'll defer to you first.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So you can buy more time to sound more profound. No, I'm just kidding.
While I'm waiting, I'll just crunch this can
That
to the
works.
microphone and make it all
Perfect.
manly and toss
Yeah.
it across the room. It wasn't quite empty.
I don't. So if I'm speaking to boys or people who are growing up, I first off need to say I don't feel like I am qualified authority.
I'm
I
starting to
don't feel
wonder
like
if
I
I'm
am
a
a
man.
man. Yeah, I don't feel like I'm a qualified authority for you to gain your, advice from. However, being someone who has grown up and does consider themselves to have, for the most part, successfully navigated that time of their life. Two things are true. One is that you're good enough the way you are, and you don't need to change. The other thing that's true is that you suck and you need to change. So if you can find a way to not lose yourself while being a better person, do it.
All right.
That's very much all I have.
That's actually pretty profound, wise words, I think.
Thanks.
I don't know that I can add to that except by going back to my
God.
Yeah. I mean, every answer is God. That's just the bottom line for me.
Up to God,
have
you
you read
guys.
the Bible? It's pretty good. There's a lot of stuff in there.
There's a lot of men in there with awesome beards.
Yes.
Yeah, I would actually really agree with Nathan, and I would say that God loves you absolutely the way that you are, and He wants to help you grow. Like that's what He does as a parent, right? So all issues, whether we're talking about gender issues, whether we're talking about masculine growing up, being a better you, being a better husband, whatever, just be a better person, a better friend, whatever. It all comes down to embracing who you are and believing absolutely in and trusting in God. So it's going to sound like a cop-out answer, but I'm just basically supporting what Nathan said. God loves you absolutely the way that you are, and He wants to help you grow up, which is change. It's transformation. But growing up doesn't mean that you are not you. It means that you're just a better version. You're getting healthier and more capable of loving others more, So, I mean, if you think about it, a kid is it's very hard for a kid to take care of others, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have to grow up in order to be able to truly take care of others. And that's what God is helping us do, is grow into more of an like Him. So
cool. I dig it. And if none of you have any final words, we'll wrap it up. Anything?
Exegetical.
That's a good word. Cher, how about you?
I have nothing. God,
Oh, okay.
That's
Penis.
it's my only answer to everything.
God. That's a good answer.
Sorry, I was saying penis while you were saying God.
It's,
Whatever. Well, Nathan, CR, thank you guys so much for being here, and it's been a pleasure, and hopefully somebody can take something out of this nonsense, but thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Sweet.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with two manly men, Nathan and CR, about masculinity as much as I did and always do. I think it's a very important topic, and I can't stress it enough. When I have a couple drinks, I rant about this because it drives me crazy that being a man is bad. It's become a bad thing. And even before the whole toxic masculinity, the whole alpha male thing was a bad thing, being a man such as myself and my two guests, being, kind of on the artsy, feely side of the spectrum of masculinity, it made you less of a man, but I don't know. You let me know. Are we wrong? Are we totally wrong? Are we totally off base? I want to know what you think. Post in the comments down below if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Then just go join the Systems Down forum, which you can join for absolutely free by going to tsidpod.com/forum. And come in there and let me know what you think. Let me know the answer to the question. Is masculinity a bad thing? Is it a good thing? What is it? How do you even define it these days? I'm curious, genuinely curious. So let me know. In the forum, I mean, we talk about everything. We talk about all the conspiracies, politics, and religion and stuff. And we like to have fun debates. We have questions of the day. We raise all these uncomfortable conversations and just discuss them civilly with each other. It is I would say, the most healthy place that exists within the sphere of Facebook. So go to tsidpod.com/forum, jump in there for free, and go sign up for the Downers Club at patreon.com/The System Is Down, and you'll get a bunch of bonus audio and video content like Rotten Potatoes movie reviews, extended interviews with our guests, which there will be several of those coming out this week with the people that I talked to here. Nathan and I talked for probably, maybe an hour to 2 hours before we started talking to CR, and then we talked for a little bit with CR after. So there's probably going to be 2 or 3 bonus episodes just from these conversations coming out this week. We also do Would You Rather Wednesday, a horrifying game of Would You Rather, very not politically correct, that I do with Remzo Martinez, and just a bunch of other stuff. So go check that out, patreon.com/The System Is Down. You know what it is. Get in there. It's only $5 a month. If you join for $5 a month and listen to the giant amount of content that we have and decide to leave, you can peace out and never pay again. So for $5, you can get hours and hours of content, but I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to stick around because people seem to, for the most part. Also, I forgot to give a shout out at the beginning of the show to the latest member to join the Downers Club. His name is Chris James. Chris James signed up at the $5 level to Patreon. So be like Chris. Be like Chris. Patreon.com/The System Is Down. You're only helping the show get better. And go like, subscribe to the show, leave us a review on iTunes, all that stuff, or Apple Podcast app, whatever you want to call it. iTunes just rolls off the tongue easier than Apple Podcast app. But we're on Stitcher and all the things. Go leave reviews. We're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, everything. Like, share, subscribe, tell somebody about the show. I would appreciate all those things, and they're all absolutely free, and you will not regret them. I 100% guarantee it, or you're $0 back. And go talk to somebody this week. Go talk to somebody about, maybe talk about masculinity. Just bring up these topics in regular conversations when you're sitting at the bar having a drink. That's what this podcast is. This podcast started just because I would sit around with my friends. We would have some drinks, and then we'd start talking about deep, quote unquote, deep theological stuff and like conspiracies, politics, religion. All these topics would come up, and I was like, this needs to happen out in the real world. So I'm not saying like stop somebody on the street and say, hey, what do you think about masculinity? But when you're hanging out with your friends, if you know that they're, I don't know, feminists or something, just ask them, what do you think about masculinity? And hear them out, hear what they have to say, and be respectful to them. And, maybe we'll change the world someday with this whole uncomfortable idea of being uncomfortable and having these conversations. I'm rambling now, but I truly believe in the idea of changing the world through just being civil and being real with people. And being real with people means being respectful with people. Treating people the way you would like to be treated, unless you're a masochist, in which case, do not treat them the way you like to be treated. But aside from that, just be a nice person and have a conversation about things that most people would get angry about, and don't get triggered. That's it. That's all there is to it. And that's what this show is. And I thank you guys also very much for tuning back in and having me back after my sabbatical. Hopefully I got back into the swing of things reasonably okay. We'll see how it goes. I've got some controversial episodes coming up for you soon, so things are going to get real uncomfortable real quick, so stay tuned. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a world of fun. But yeah, again, thank you guys. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for supporting, be it financially or just downloading the show. Every subscription helps boost our numbers, boost our ratings, boost our visibility to the world, and I appreciate that very much. I don't know why I'm allowed to do this, but as long as I am allowed to do this, I'm going to keep doing it for you. So thanks, and if you'll have me, you know it, I'll be back here in your ears first thing next Monday morning with some more uncomfortable conversations for you. Until then, ladies, gentlemen, and everything in between, question everything and stay uncomfortable. Thanks. This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.